All right, welcome in Powers on Sports Podcast. Appreciate you finding us. We are back with one of our regulars as we approach March Madness, about 2 weeks away. No better person to talk some hoops, some NFL. We got NFL free agency coming here in just a couple of weeks. We got some salary cap dumping by some teams around the league already beginning. Mr. TJ Rives, welcome in, sir.
Hey, it's always good to be with you, especially in and around March. It is my favorite month, not just because it's my birthday, but I think this is the best event in sports. Some will argue the NFL playoffs or the Stanley Cup playoffs, or certainly one-time events. I know you didn't ask this, like the Kentucky Derby, the final, the Indianapolis 500, the Masters. Right. We know those, but in terms of an event, a 3-weekend event, with all the drama and the little guy getting to get in there with the big guy, there's nothing that beats this. So I'm anxious to talk about that. I have a feeling you're going to have a question or two about the Buccaneers and the new offensive coordinator and who's going to play quarterback. I'm looking forward to all of this. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, Mr. Rives is the sideline reporter for the Buccaneers, part of the Buccaneer Radio Network. He also hosts college basketball show on BetUS TV, does a little boxing show, podcast, still has his 3 Dog Thursday, and we're even going to be calling a little winner take all into March Madness with the Big South tournament a week from Saturday or Sunday in Charlotte, North Carolina. Tell the audience.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Some guy named Jason Powers, for whatever reason, has decided he wants to come be part of my mayhem and my madness. So for about 7 years now, I have been broadcasting games with TuneIn, the online audio giant. They're one of the two big guns along with iHeart. So TuneIn has got tremendous coverage of college sports all through the season, and then the Westwood One coverage of conference tournament championship weekend and the NCAA tournament. And I have worked different conference championship games with the automatic bid on the line, like you're describing, all throughout really the last 7 years, really 8 years now. This will be the 9th different season that I've been doing it, save for the pandemic crazy season of 2021. That it's a ton of fun to go do these conference games. And the Big South Conference, you've got UNC Asheville. Again, these aren't household names, smaller conference, one bid league. More than likely the winning team for the automatic bid is going to be like a 15 seed, maybe a 16 seed. So it is interesting, Jason, that when you're talking about UNC Asheville, Radford, these are the teams in the Big South Conference, and the Carolinas in kind of the mid-Atlantic area. High Point, Winthrop, Longwood, Campbell. These are all the schools, all smaller schools. This is the biggest deal for them. And if they end up winning the automatic bid, they might get in there against an Alabama. They might get in there. It's a 1 seed. They might get in there against a Purdue, a Kansas. Exactly. So we're going to have a front row seat. You and I are going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, call that game a week from Sunday on March the 5th. We don't know who's going to be there. Right. I mean, UNC Asheville's the top seed. They've won the regular season title. They've had a really good regular season. They've won again tonight, which is their 15th league win. But there's no guarantee that the 1 seed is going to be there. They even have an NBA prospect in Drew Pember, a 7-foot athletic big guy. And there's no guarantee that ensures them of even being in the championship game, much less winning it. Welcome to March Madness. They may not get there, Brother Powers.
And the beauty is, like we all talk about, not everybody makes the field of 68, but every team has a chance. I don't care what your record is. Every team has their chance to get to their dream of an NCAA tournament bid. It may not be the 68, but the Radfords of the world, the Presbyterian, who I know has struggled in that league. If you win 3 games in a row, you're going to the NCAA tournament.
And Winthrop has been a team that's won NCAA tournament games before.
Remember Greg Marshall back in the day coached
That's
at
correct.
Winthrop?
Good call. Before Wichita State had been at Winthrop, and this is that same league. And let's just see. Let's see what happens. And you're absolutely right. We'll say this numerous times, whether it's here on Powers on Sports, whether it's the college basketball coast-to-coast coverage with the podcast and the live shows and all the stuff coming in March, there are going to be at least 10 games, at least 10, that have no explanation between now and like Final Four time. How in the world did that team with all of those losses in a conference tournament game beat that team that had such a great regular season? How did that little 15 seed, that little 16 seed little 14 seed, beat that team they had no business beating out of a power conference. It's going to happen over and over again, and I love it. I love it. So I'm excited to be with you on the Big South championship game for that coverage. And again, it's on TuneIn through their premium service. You've got to subscribe. It's a monthly subscription. Here's a sneaky little thing. They'll tell you this. You can get the free week trial on the week of March Madness, and you'll be able to hear TJ and Jason. Sign up for the TuneIn subscription, and you'll be able to hear everything, including you and I broadcasting the Big South Championship game exclusively digitally on TuneIn and the College Basketball Coast to Coast channel. So I'm excited about all of that and how it's going to all unfold.
And I believe that's a 1 o'clock tip on Sunday the 5th.
Yes, correct.
Eastern.
It's an afternoon game. There is also a Missouri Valley Conference title game with an automatic bid that afternoon, and I believe there's a couple of other conferences that night that crown a champion. Yep. So Saturday night, the night before on March the 4th, there's a couple that night as well. So the first few teams is the point in the NCAA tournament. We're going to be all over this that weekend, and we're going to be at one of the sites for the Big South Championship game. And
here's the other scary thing too, and we'll move on. In these smaller conference games, a lot of these teams, some of these conferences may get 2 bids depending on the, the Mountain West and some of these other bids. The interesting things are all these bubble teams is when there is a bid stealing scenario in effect, when maybe a Mountain West team or something that we think is going to make it as an at-large is up against a team that won't make it unless they win the conference tournament scenario.
Sure.
We see one of those 2 every year where the bubble teams are sweating it out that these lower seeded teams in these smaller conferences don't win the automatic bid.
That's right. They're called bid stealers, and we don't really have a great example in the tiny conferences of a dominant team that would have an at-large case. But let's give
maybe
you a
FAU, maybe an FAU.
Well, right. Yes, exactly. So like in Conference USA, if Florida Atlantic down in Boca Raton in their final year in Conference USA, they're moving up to the American Conference when all the realignment happens and the Big 12 grabs UCF, Florida, Cincinnati, Houston out of the Big 12. So Florida Atlantic's one of the teams that's going to move up to the American. This is their last year in Conference USA. They've had a tremendous regular season. If they get all the way to the championship game, they have an at-large case. That's a good point in Conference USA. But if somebody else gets the automatic bid, does that jeopardize FAU? Does it jeopardize somebody else in the Power 6 conferences like the ACC, the SEC, Big 10, Big East? We don't know. Another one is, speaking of the American, Houston's the number 1 team in the country.
Yep.
Probably Memphis is the only other team with an at-large case.
Right.
Let's say that Memphis, my alma mater, helps their at-large case even more, but doesn't win the tournament. Houston is in, maybe Memphis is in. Now, if a third different team wins that tournament, there would be a bid stealer.
Correct.
And I'll give you a couple of more, like out of the Pac-12.
Yes.
All right, it's all the way out west. UCLA, Arizona, USC appear to be 3 teams that are all going to be in. UCLA and Arizona are definitely in. USC is probably the third one in. There's not really a good case for anybody else out of Arizona State, out of Oregon, out of Colorado, anybody else. Yeah. There's not really a good case. But if one of those teams puts it together and wins the automatic bid, there's a bid stealer. There's a 4th Pac-12 team besides UCLA, Arizona, USC that grabs a spot from somebody else at large. So we'll keep an eye on this as it goes along. But you make a great point with all these smaller conferences. The only other good thing, too, is like for a UNC Asheville in the Big South, or if FAU ends up as the regular season champs in Conference USA, you're guaranteed to at least be in the NIT as the regular season champion. If you don't win the conference tournament and get the automatic bid, you at least know that you're in the NIT as the regular season champ that didn't make it. So that went into effect a few years ago. The NIT was smart to do that. So at least you have some consolation to keep rolling along. Can't wait for March. And we've got a regional a first and second round in Orlando, right here by where Jason and I are doing the show in the Tampa Bay area. And then we'll progress all the way through all the different 8 opening round regional sites, 4 Sweet 16 Elite 8 sites to the Final 4 in Houston the first weekend in April. Can't wait for that.
I know you cover, obviously you do your daily college hoop show with different guys all around the country. What seems to be the prevailing opinion of the decline of the ACC this year?
I don't know. I mean, and again, the ACC, you got to appreciate, I know you do, they've got 14 schools. now in the ACC.
Right.
You're not going to get 7, 8, 9 of them in the NCAA tournament every year, but this seems to be a little bit more down year. I mean, at the time that you and I are doing this and you're releasing the podcast, how in the world is Virginia, who's one of the top teams in college basketball, the top team at the top of the standings in the ACC, they go and lose, welcome to conference play, to a really bad Boston College team at BC. It only makes you think, how wide open is the ACC tournament going to be? And right now it's like it's Virginia, it's Miami, it's Duke, and maybe NC State probably, and maybe that's it at large.
Does Pitt most likely
Does Pitt sneak in? Does North Carolina start doing some damage late in the year and give themselves a case? I don't think North Carolina's in right now, Jason.
As
so the
right
ACC
now, preseason #1 team in the country, not in the tournament.
How about that with North Carolina after getting all the way to the title game? Now, there's still time for them to get work done, but the ACC probably 5 at the most.
Right.
So, like, Pitt and Clemson and North Carolina may be vying for a spot out of the ACC.
Crazy. Have you watched any of that ACC tournament documentary? That's been pretty good on the ACC network.
I have not been checking that out, but I mean, there's so much history behind, behind that tournament and everything that has gone on in that tournament. It's amazing, the tradition and the history going on about 60 years between not just North Carolina and Duke, but now all the other programs that have added to it. Just keep in mind, Virginia has a recent national championship out of the ACC.
Yeah.
And certainly there are some other programs that would love to do damage, right? I mean, Miami may be as high as a 2 seed if they keep winning
a lot of people
here
like
in
Miami.
in the upcoming ACC tournament, if they keep winning, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see how it all plays out in the ACC. But yeah, you're right. I mean, when you start going back to the Christian Laettners and the Michael Jordans and all the great players, even back to
Lefty Drizel, Len Bias.
Lefty Drizel at Maryland with Len Bias, David Thompson, the Skywalker with NC State in the 70s. I know we're going back to the dark ages. That conference has such a tradition of great college basketball. And why do I get the feeling there'll be an ACC team, maybe 2 of them, that make noise in the NCAA tournament? That will probably happen. Remember, John Shire at Duke, this is the first time that Duke will have a different head coach in the NCAA tournament in over 25 years. Coach K didn't coach in the mid-90s,
right?
When he had the air quotes back problems that you remember. But a lot of people privately behind the scenes believe it was much more than that, with stress and stress-related situation, whatever. They were bad that year. They barely got in the tournament, and he didn't coach that team. But the other 42 out of his 43 years, he was the Duke coach. And now John Shire, a former player of his on the national title team in 2010, is the coach. How will Duke handle themselves this NCAA tournament? I can't wait. And if you can't tell, audience, I will talk to Jason for another 30 minutes if he lets me about March Madness. I can't wait.
I love it. I'm always I just so happen to be sick that Thursday and Friday every year. I don't know what it is.
Those should be national holidays, brother.
I know, man.
They should be national holidays. Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament, just like the Monday after the Super Bowl.
Big 12. Are they clearly the most dominant league from top to bottom?
Oh, my Lord. I mean, when you look at the bottom of it, and Texas Tech was 1-9 in the conference, and Texas Tech may be about a win or 2 away from having an at-large case after being 1-9. That's how strong that tournament is. Don't just listen to you and me. Bob Huggins. Bob Huggins was the West Virginia coach. He's been in the Final Four at West Virginia. He's been in the Final Four previously with Cincinnati. I don't want to talk about it. They beat my Memphis State Tigers and Penny Hardaway to go to the Final Four in 1992, my senior year. I still have not gotten over that. That's 30 years ago. I haven't gotten over that. Huggins was part of the Big East in 2013, Jason Powers, when 11 Big East teams made the NCAA tournament. This is going to come up again. 11 of them. And at that time, the Big East had Cincinnati, Louisville, Notre Dame still in the Big East as part of it. DePaul, Marquette, all those teams.
Yeah.
They were all in it. 11 made it. Bob Huggins says this year's Big 12 with 10 teams is better than that Big East in 2013. And he would know. He would be qualified to know. Huggy Bear says Kansas, Kansas State, Baylor, Texas, Texas Tech, TCU.
Kansas
I'm going to leave
State.
somebody else. All of them. Oak State. It is a better conference, a tougher, more demanding conference than the Big East was, that put 11 teams in in 2013. There you go.
Right, it's crazy. I mean, I think Texas Tech has beaten 3 top 15 teams.
They have.
They've only got like 4 conference wins, and 3 of them are against.
Well, they got 6 now. They got 6 now. They still have Kansas left.
Yeah.
They still have TCU left.
And the tournament.
If they end up getting 2 more significant wins, they have a case. I'm not saying Texas Tech's going to get in, but they have a case with how tough that league is.
Absolutely. Give me 1 or 2 mid-major teams that you think off the radar could make a little noise.
Pick one out of the Mountain West in particular. Watch out for like Steve Alford's Nevada team that you don't hear a lot about. There's a couple of other ones there. Utah State is good. San Diego State, we know more about. I know what you're saying, but off the radar, those are a couple of them. Nevada and Utah State out of that conference. I'll be interested to see out of, can my Memphis Tigers get in? Would they be dangerous with Kendrick Davis, the SMU transfer who's been so fantastic? If he gets healthy, Memphis might be a dangerous first 4 team or 12 seed. I know I'm being a little biased on that. You mentioned FAU, Florida Atlantic. What are they going to look like? This will be fascinating to see what some of these teams do when they can get in there with the big boys and mix it up.
And there's so much parity this year with there not being a true dominant team. You're going to see a 6 or 7 seed get to the final 8, if not in one or two, if not at least one region, maybe multiple regions where a 6, 7, and 8 seed probably gets to the final 8 at least.
And I would not be surprised if you have a couple of teams that are outside the top 2 or 3 seed lines that get in the final 4.
Right.
It's been that crazy of a year with all the upsets. Cannot wait to roll the sleeves up. There's upsets coming. Let's watch it all unfold.
All right, listen to the Power Sun Sports Podcast. TJ Rives, host of the Bet US TV. Give us a little pub on the show. Where can we find the Bet US show?
Bet US TV on all of their platforms, YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, everywhere that they are socially. We do live college basketball, 11 a.m. Eastern time every weekday, Monday through Friday, all the way through March, all the way through the tournament. If you need your degenerate gambling advice, this is the show for you. I'm not saying you specifically, Jason Powers, but to the audience, because we're going over everything, even small conference games, deep in the weeds, these conference tournaments. We go over it with the spreads, the totals. I have handicappers on. It is a degenerate haven on Bet US. But you know what? It keeps you on your toes to talk about all of these. There's 32 conferences to talk about all these conferences and know something about all these different teams. So again, thank you for the plug. Find it weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time on BetUS's YouTube channel, BetUS TV. On their social media, we are there talking live college basketball every weekday, sir.
Let's get to a couple things off the court that aren't so pretty.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where I once lived really close to in Birmingham. What obviously we all know about the situation 6-8 weeks ago with the player on the team involved in the homicide. I always thought how fast that story kind of went away, thinking something ain't right here, that somebody's not telling all the information, because it kind of got washed away pretty quickly once that player was eliminated from the team and charged and all that. Now it comes up that Brandon Miller, the All-American, top 5 probably picking the NBA draft, the freshman, was involved way more than we thought he was, as far as taking a car ride to potentially pick up the assailant who ended up shooting the young lady, and God rest her soul for her passing away in a terrible situation. How do you, just give me your thoughts on how Nate Oates and that administration has handled that this week. A very poor optically look coming out of Tuscaloosa.
So here are the facts of what went on, elaborating on what you just said. The first thing is they already addressed the situation because he got arrested and charged with capital murder with the player Darius Miles. Miles was a former Washington, D.C. high school player who transferred into Alabama. This was his second season there. He had been hurt in December and had not been playing, and they had already ruled him out prior to the shooting for the rest of the year, that he was basically going to take a redshirt year, going to be out for the rest of the year. So the shooting happens. He is not the shooter. It is another individual that is the alleged shooter. Now, where Brandon Miller ties in, a much more prominent player, one of the leading players of the Southeastern Conference, as you mentioned, an NBA draft pick. What has come to light this week is that Brandon Miller was not only there, but that Brandon Miller apparently brought the gun to the scene of the argument and the dispute, the gun that was eventually used by the shooter, not the other Alabama player.
Right.
Okay, and so there's so many different layers to how screwed up is this. This is the first we're finding out about it.
And real quick, the coaching staff and the administration knew that Miller drove the gun there 2 months ago.
Correct. They all knew, and they knew he had talked to the police, and they knew he hadn't been charged, and they're sitting on it. They're keeping it quiet. So now in the essentially the preliminary hearing where they're going over the charges, and this is where the officers are bringing it up about Brandon Miller's name and about his involvement. And suddenly the Alabama media goes crazy, as they should. That's the first time they're learning about it. So now we go down the whole road of what's worse, doing this stuff, doing the crime, committing the violations, or the cover up. If you're trying to cover it up and you're trying to hide it, a lot of times it's way worse than if you go ahead and just get out in front of it. It makes you look like you care more about winning, about his draft stock, that you're just hoping that everybody doesn't find out that he's somehow involved in a capital murder case.
It hasn't been suspended. Has not been suspended.
It's his vehicle. It's him bringing the gun to the scene. And then you've got a prosecutor who's saying there's not anything that we can charge him with. And most of us, we're not lawyers. We're just playing it on the Powers on Sports podcast. Most of us are sitting back saying, what about accessory to murder? What about having some involvement in the shooting and being charged as a co-conspirator or somebody that was involved? That's definitely something that's in a lot of states' laws and criminal justice code. So you're wondering if this is over with yet, if the pressure won't get turned up and there could be charges coming. Now, again, at the time you and I are doing this podcast, Alabama is playing tonight and Brandon Miller is playing in the game. And Nate Oates, the coach, who's done a fantastic job and just got another contract extension, he's got Alabama as one of the top teams in the country. He didn't do himself any favors with some of the wording he used, including wrong place, wrong time. He's really a good kid that's never been in trouble except for this. Well, that's the same goes for Miles, the other player, whether he's really ever been in trouble or not. He's charged with capital murder. And Brandon Miller may end up getting charged here. Let's see what happens. Let's see what plays out. And Alabama definitely has more explaining to do as this unfolds. I don't think this is the end of it. I certainly know the questions will keep being asked because they tried to cover it up for as long as they could.
Because the sad part, and you and I both know this, if Brandon Miller's name was Billy Miller and he was the third guy off the bench, we'd have known about this 2 months ago and he wouldn't be on the Alabama team.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that does have something to do with it. If it's not a prominent player, treated differently. Circumstance, and as much as everybody would go, oh, no, that's not the case, they would do the right thing.
All-American.
Look at this case. Look at this case as an example, as opposed to just your average student or somebody else that's a reserve or an also ran. So you're right on that front. What a mess for Alabama. It is a distraction. We'll see how long it continues to be a problem. We'll see how long Brandon Miller continues to play, because as you mentioned, Alabama hasn't done anything discipline-wise. Nothing. And the authorities in Alabama can still charge him, kids. They can still come up with something if there's pressure on them to charge him with something. And that would be the end, you would think, because he's headed to the NBA in a couple of months anyway.
He's going to be gone from Tuscaloosa 2 days after they get eliminated from the NCAA tournament.
Whenever that is. Exactly. So let's stay tuned on that.
Yeah, Nate, the lack of communication out of the AD has been alarming. He came out in a statement today before the South Carolina game saying, well, we're going to keep playing. We're going to keep playing Brandon Miller, which is mind-blowing to me that they don't at least sit him down for a couple games.
Yeah, and you want one better? Greg Byrne is who you're talking about, the athletic director. He's on the NCAA selection committee. Oh, He's part of the committee meeting to determine who the teams are in the field.
Right.
So what a situation for Alabama to be going through. But again, it's not, this is a great lesson yet again. It's not always the crime, the transgression, the problem. It's the cover up. It's trying to ignore it, hide it, that often comes back and makes it even worse.
And I'm just going to make this one comment and we'll move on. for the lack of judgment by Brandon Miller at 1:00 in the morning when your buddy says, "Hey, drive me, come pick me up and bring my gun," for Brandon Miller to have the sense of, okay, I'm going to go do that, is just mind blowing for a kid who, I know he's a college kid, but in this day and age, 18 years old, you know better than that. I don't care where you come from. You should know better than that. In the situation he's in, where he's got a lottery ticket waiting for him in the matter of 6 months.
Well, and look, there have been other instances, and we'll move on. There have been other instances, too, where there have been players, high school, prominent recruits, shot to death, getting mixed up in these situations. Shootings and being on the wrong end of it, not the shooter, but being shot and killed. So yes, awful decisions, decisions that have life-altering ramifications for those. Yep. This is a life and death thing. Someone got murdered, got shot to death in this. It gets no bigger than that. So basketball is secondary, and let's see what happens with this situation with Miller and with Alabama.
All right, let's move to the football field, the gridiron. We got free agency getting ready to start. The NFL league year starts in a couple of weeks, March 15th, I believe. Interesting date this week. Yeah, the start of the franchise tag window that teams can place the franchise tag on players. I think that runs through March the 7th. Couple interesting names I want to get your thoughts on. Lamar Jackson. What do the Ravens do with Lamar? Do they put the exclusive tag on him, which means only they can negotiate with him? Or do they put the non-exclusive tag, meaning if another team wants to make Lamar an offer, they can. The Ravens could then match it. And if they don't match it, they get 2 number 1 draft picks. What do you do if you're the Baltimore Ravens? You've been fighting with Lamar for 6 months about the guaranteed money in a long-term contract.
If I'm them, how do you let him walk away, even for draft picks? I mean, if I'm the GM, if I'm pulling the trigger there, at the minimum, you do the exclusive or the right of first refusal, or however you want to term it, the free agency tag on him, as opposed to the franchise tag, because the franchise tag would guarantee him like $30+ million for one season. And you 45. Would really, with your salary cap, and we saw this with the Buccaneers with Chris Godwin, and we've seen this with other teams, you want the cap flexibility to not tie up $32 million guaranteed on your cap on a 1-year deal, as opposed to, without getting into all the salary cap back and forth, you want to be able to spread that money out. And you can if you do a multi-year deal. You can't if it's just the 1-year franchise deal. And so what the Bucs did is they put the franchise tag on Chris Godwin a couple of years ago, and then they gave him the long-term deal. They changed it. They had the exclusive right to negotiate. They changed it, spread his money out, and that may be very well what Baltimore does. The short answer is they can't let him just walk away. Too electric of a player, and what's your other option? I mean, he is the offense for them. So there's my answer to that on Lamar Jackson.
And they just brought in a guy we know, Todd Monken, to be the new OC in Baltimore. So it's going to be a new offensive system for Lamar Jackson. So another
in your opinion, he had his choice of where to go. He's the Georgia offensive coordinator, could have been a college head coach. Obviously wants to get on the track to be an NFL head coach because he was here with the Buccaneers as the offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. We're talking about under Dirk Cutter. He then went to Cleveland for a season and was with Baker Mayfield as the offensive coordinator. Now has been in college at Georgia as the offensive coordinator for 2 national titles in a row. He had his pick of wherever to go. In your opinion, has he been assured that Lamar Jackson is going to be back, or has he been told, get ready because you're going to mold whoever we have? What's your educated speculation? He has to have been told one or the other. I can't believe he takes that job without being told, yes, we're going with Lamar Jackson, or without being told, we're not going to go with Lamar. You're going to have input on picking who the quarterback is, whatever deal we make, whoever we draft. I think he's got to be been told. What do you think?
I think part of the deal with him going to Baltimore, maybe not coming to a place like Tampa or some other places, I think the stability, he knows John Harbaugh is not 1 year away from potentially getting fired. Whereas some other spots around the league, if he goes there, those coaches are on the hot seat and it might be a one and done situation depending on where he went. So I think that was part of it. I guarantee he got paid a boatload to be the OC in Baltimore, to leave Georgia. And 2 and 3, you got to think as an offensive coordinator, the electric guy you could have at quarterback potentially with Lamar Jackson and all the things you could do offensively with him.
I wonder if they have given him that assurance. We're not letting that guy leave. You would think he got some kind of assurance to take their job when he didn't have to.
I agree.
Well,
All right, let's come back to our neck of the woods here. Dave Canales just named the OC for the Buccaneers in the last few days. Comes to Tampa from Seattle, where he was the quarterback coach under Pete Carroll and a couple other roles. Worked with Geno Smith, who won Comeback Player of the Year this last year. Just your general thought about the move in general.
It's interesting because it's all the way on the opposite continent, part of the continent, diagonally to the northwest of us. But they've had so much success with Russell Wilson, as you mentioned, and then Geno Smith out of that offense. And Canales, again, is highly regarded. They brought him in. They brought him back in and obviously believe in him with his work specifically with Geno Smith and a young quarterback. And I thought it was interesting because, again, we're releasing this podcast today on the day that he met the media for the first time. He very openly talked about Kyle Trask. Now, he said, I can only talk about who we have in the building, and we have one quarterback in the building right now because of free agency and everything else. I can only talk about Kyle Trask, but he had a lot of good things to say about evaluating him coming out for the draft. And what he sees. Now, there's speculation that Geno Smith may be a free agent. Obviously, Seattle could put a franchise tag on him, I believe, or some kind of restriction on him coming here. I know there's rumors about Drew Lock, the former Missouri first-round pick, who was a Denver Bronco quarterback. He came to Seattle in the trade for Russell Wilson, and Lock basically didn't play behind Geno Smith. Would Canales convince the Buccaneers, bring Drew Lock in, have Lock battle with Kyle Trask? Neither one of them costs very much. I don't know that that's going to happen. If you ask me, what would I do? You got to get a proven veteran backup. And I trust Kyle Trask here to have the chance to win the job in training camp and the preseason and the beginning of the regular season. Let's let him duke it out with a veteran and see who ends up winning the starting job. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know what they're going to do. Jason Powers. I don't know if they're going to try to
they're $50 million over the cap, so they got to make some moves.
Yes,
which means they may go young at quarterback as far as inexpensive.
And I think Kyle Trask is a $500,000 or $600,000 cap hit. Yeah. That's a great luxury right now to see what you have there. And again, let's refresh. I'm not a Gator. I don't apologize for the Florida Gators. I didn't go to the University of Florida. But he smashed all kinds of records 2 college seasons ago. Yep. This will be 3 years now when we get to this year. He smashed them. He smashed them in his year that he got to start and got to play in the best league in all of college football that produces the most NFL players. Are you so ridiculously blind that you can't see that Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts and Mac Jones and even Drew Lock getting drafted in the first round, they're all out of that same conference,
right?
Give Kyle Trask the chance to win the starting job. I'm fine with that. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they make a splash move and bring a splash quarterback in. And if they do, then Trask has got to be content just to be the backup in case something happens, because it's more than likely not a competition if they do that. But I don't have a problem with the competition. This time a year ago, when Tom Brady was retired, remember, air quotes, I kept saying on your show and everywhere else, I'm fine with trying Kyle Trask.
Yep.
I am still fine with trying at a discounted price Kyle Trask, because you may be pleasantly surprised that he looks like Mac Jones or Tua Tagovailoa, or even to a lesser extent, Joe Burrow's been fantastic. But if he looks anything like what some of these SEC quarterbacks recently have looked like, you're going to be fine at the quarterback position, especially with the weapons you have.
I'm going to give you a name that I think could be a inexpensive guy that could come in and compete with Kyle Trask, has some Florida Tampa ties, from the former University of South Florida player, Mike White.
Interesting.
That he had some success. That he had some
now he's a free agent. He's an unrestricted free agent.
He is.
Interesting. Doesn't cost very much. Has played a little bit.
And he played well when he got a chance to play. He just couldn't stay healthy last year. So that would be a guy that's a name that I think, again, you could get him at a very reasonable price. He'll have an opportunity, like you said, to win the job potentially. So I think that would, in a new offense.
Blaine Gabbert, by the way, makes a lot of sense on coming back, familiarity with the personnel. It's going to be a different offense. So maybe that's an option.
Yep.
Let's just see. You got salary cap issues right now. I mean, if I'm asking for like Santa Claus things right now, here in February, even though it's not Christmas, can we get Levante David back as an unrestricted free agent? I don't know what kind of discount he would take, but I want Levante to play his whole career in Tampa Bay. I'm biased. And I know Jason Light and Mike Greenberg and John Spytek and everybody behind the scenes, they are working on it. They're trying to figure it all out, and let's see if we can bring Levante back.
Last thought, and I'll get you out of here. Quick thought on your buddy Rondé Barber getting into the Hall of Fame.
Tremendous. I could sit here for another 15 minutes. We don't have it, but well-deserved. Again, the only player in the history of the NFL with at least 25 sacks and at least 40 interceptions. It's incredible, the defense he was on. So give Rondé, it's going to be special. It's going to be special. I know he and his brother Tiki, I've known them for 25 years. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tiki's going to introduce him, and that means we will have witnessed a defense with Sapp and Brooks.
4 of them.
And John Lynch and him on the same defense, and Tony Dungy as the coach. Pretty incredible as a Buccaneer fan. No doubt, my friend.
All right, tell everybody one more time where they can find all your great work.
Listen, it's great to be with you. You can find me, obviously, at Bucs Sideline Guy on Twitter, BUC, Bucs Sideline Guy. College basketball, coast to coast is the college basketball show. 3 Dog Thursday podcast. We talk underdogs in college hoops right now. Football season, we talk underdogs. That's good enough for right now. Is a little boxing at Big Fight Weekend?
I was gonna say, yeah, you got some. There'll be some stuff in the spring and early May with that early
Canelo.
Weekend in May with Canelo,
sure,
and all that.
We got all that stuff. But listen, you're always great to have me on Powers on Sports. I look forward to doing the Big South Championship with you. College basketball coming up in a couple of weekends. You be well, my friend.
Appreciate it, and I'll make sure that I won't take up too much space in the hotel room. I'll give you all the space you need, man. See you soon.
Thank you, sir.